The new frontier of experiential storytelling puts you, the audience member, front and center in the action without ever having to leave your home. Cutting-edge technologies at Lucasfilm and ILM X Lab create experiences for new immersive platforms like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and they are bringing exciting new ways for people to interact with their favorite characters. Our next guest will bring us up to speed on what the future of entertainment holds for the one person in the audience who is not familiar with ILM. Take a look at the artistry and technology they have created over the years. There's a video.
Are you guys awake now? A little bit? Have a seat, guys.
Thank you.
How many times have you heard that music? A few.
Every day.
A few. So I'm going to just quickly introduce our guests. Vicki Dobb-Speck is executive in charge of ILM X Lab. So I'm assuming you're in charge. Is there an executive who's not in charge, or that's it? Okay. And John Knoll is Chief Creative Officer and Senior Visual Effects Supervisor for Industrial Light and Magic at Lucasfilm. Your second claim to fame is that you developed Photoshop. So you can thank him for that. Things have changed a little bit since the Photoshop introduction to the world, and obviously in the last 30 years that you've been with Lucasfilm, right?
Yeah, 31, yeah.
31. I want to hear from both of you. You both, your focus is really technology all around, but I want to start with you, John. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about some of the biggest changes, the most monumental changes to special effects and movie making in the last few years, because there have been a lot?
Well, some of the things we're going to talk about today are increasing use of virtual production techniques. Mm-hmm. And virtual production techniques is sort of an amalgam of a couple of different technologies: motion capture, computer graphics, display systems. And then they fall into different parts of production: pre-production, mm-hmm. production, and post-production. So, for example, in pre-production, some of these virtual production technologies allow us to do sort of a version of rapid prototyping, of visualizing sets and being able to walk around and check sight lines in a VR system before you build anything, to build up versions of scenes before you've shot anything, so you can kind of work out both logistics problems and just pacing and storytelling things in advance. Then during production, some of these things come into play when we're shooting a scene that exists in an environment that you can't build or you can't go shoot somewhere. So you end up with a lot of blue screen or green screen, and you want to give people some visualization of what that is. Mm-hmm. And there are some systems that we use to let the camera operators and the directors and the actors be able to see what's going to be where the green screen is. So you can kind of frame up a shot where you compose both on an actor and something that's going to be added later. And then in post-production, we use some of these things for designing sequences that aren't starting from a live plate.
which means?
Well, most of the films that we work on, we start from a photographed something on set, and then we add to that. But there are sections of a lot of these movies where there's no bit of live action at all. It's entirely synthetic. And so we need tools to allow filmmakers to kind of work comfortably in this space where there's nothing to go shoot.
Okay, so we actually have a couple of more videos to show you guys. That was just the beginning, just a little taste. And we're going to take a look at one of these ways that you're changing movie making now. I meant now.
So specifically, this is one of the post-production applications. So this is from Rogue One. This is the director, Gareth Edwards. And one of the things that I noticed very early on, even in pre-production when we did a test shoot, is that he has a very different style of shooting from a lot of other directors that I've worked with. He shoots in a more documentary style, where he doesn't come with storyboards or even a shot list. And he even does very loose blocking with the actors, and he allows them to kind of find something that feels natural to them. And then, being his own camera operator, he likes to then go in and fish around and find those angles that feel true and right to him. And he's got a particular talent for finding those angles. But it's sometimes a little vexing for us because we don't know, what the visual effects challenges are necessarily going to be until they're actually being shot and what we have to deal with. But kind of watching that process unfold, I immediately started thinking about, well, how do we get that energy, that style of cinematography and coverage into those scenes that weren't going to start from something that Gareth shot on set with the camera? What do we do for the space battle? What do we do for shots of ships in transit? How do we get it so that it doesn't feel like a different movie when we get to those pieces? We want it to have that same energy and vibe. And so one of the thoughts is that we would use these motion captured cameras. So what you saw in the video there is Gareth is holding an iPad that's got motion tracking dots on it. And we're using, in that case, that was an HTC Vive setup that was tracking the position and orientation of the iPad in space. And that was going to a workstation that was generating a view from that, what you'd consider that to be a synthetic camera in the scene. So we had a version of the space battle that was all animated in advance. It could play back in real time. And then Gareth could fish around and find camera angles and shoot coverage in much the same way he was when he was shooting.
So what you're saying is that the filmmaker can actually shoot a scene in the same way that they would in the real life, but in a virtual environment. So it's got the same exact effects that you would expect, and kind of makes the whole movie, I guess, feel like it's shot in the same way, even though so much of it is virtual. It enables
a workflow that is more kind of just in his thought process. It works well for him creatively. And as opposed to, it's a very different process that you see in a lot of big tentpole films where shots will be storyboarded and they'll go through a previs company where the compositions are all very deliberately designed and premeditated. And we didn't really want it to have that different stylistic feel. So rather than Gareth kind of doing a brain dump of what he imagines is happening in this shot, and this shot, and this shot, and an artist taking a stab at doing that, looking at it, making comments, and going through that kind of iteration loop, which can take weeks. This is a chance for Gareth to, I have an idea for a shot. What about here? Oh no, that's not. Well, what about down here? If I go back and wider? And you could see him in some of the videos, sort of, you could see his thought process as he's trying different things. And he could walk out of that session with essentially the same thing that he walks out of live action with a whole bunch of dailies that he can then take into editorial and cut, just like it's any other part of the movie.
Okay. Vicki, can you describe what you are in charge of? What does ILMX Lab do?
Sure. ILMX Lab is actually a new division. We launched it about 2 years ago, and it was really created to develop and release immersive entertainment experiences. So while we are using a lot of the technology and talent that came from ILM, we're now creating experiences that are going direct to consumers in virtual reality and augmented reality. Some people call it mixed reality.
So talk about some of those experiences and what's Vader VR, for example?
Sure. Well, just in terms of, we very intentionally chose the name ILM X Lab. We didn't call it VR because we were really open to all kinds of platforms. And we used the word lab because we knew, because we are so early in this process, it's like, you know, the earliest days of film, that we knew we were going to do a lot of experimentation and learning. So what we've done to date has been indeed a lot of that. We released something called Trials on Tatooine, which was...
Have any of you experienced this, by the way?
It's pretty fun. You get to have a lightsaber. Sunny's done it. But it is, what that was really an experiment to understand what the balance between light story and interactivity in a first-person point of view. We've done other things for mobile VR platforms. We've done some simulation of mixed reality. All of those things we've learned from. And so what you were referring to with the Vader VR story series is something that we announced about a year ago. And it's really an attempt to do episodic VR storytelling. And all of these experiments that we've done to date have helped us as we're in the design process now. There's a lot that works and doesn't work, actually.
What's the actual experience? What do you?
It'll actually be a immersive story in which you actually interact with characters. You come face to face with Darth Vader, and you make meaningful choices that will impact how the narrative unfolds.
Okay. So how many of you are in the VR space in some way or another? Raise your hands. There are a few. So a lot of I know that there are many different applications actually now, but a lot of the earlier attempts with entertainment forms are taking really different forms, right? How do you think about, I mean, there's the technology piece of it and rendering the Millennium Falcon in a virtual environment and things like that, but there's also the story aspect, which of course you guys pay a lot of attention to. So what have you found does work and what doesn't work? How do you go about, you know, your interaction with I would think it could be kind of frightening to have Darth Vader breathing down, you know, right in front of you. What do people respond to?
Well, I think one of the things that's really unique about VR in particular is that you really enter into a world. You are in that place, and those characters are there with you. And for the experience to be really compelling, you have to feel like that interaction with the character is authentic, and the character is responding in the way that you would expect them to. So people have talked about presence and building empathy, and all those things are actually true in VR because of this sense of being there. It's much more visceral and impactful than a lot of other forms of media.
Okay, and I believe we have, this is our last video, but we have a video that's showing one of the ways that you're looking at having people interact with characters. So let's take a look at that.
Very recent work with autonomous characters, and you could see that K2SO was actually responding in the way you would expect him to when they were hitting on him, when they were moving their gaze, etc. That's really, really important, and so we've been doing a lot of investigation in that area of development. I think that these technologies are really, really powerful, but you've got to take lots of different facets of it and bring them together. And then, as you say, our ultimate goal is to deliver really compelling, immersive stories.
So can you both talk a little bit about what that could actually look like in terms of the distribution and just what's the model for this? I know there's work being done you're part of Disney, of course, and so there's work being done at the theme parks, and I'll ask you about that too. But But what potential models are you looking at? Like, how are we actually going to have these interactions? Do we go to a physical space? Do we do this at home? What does it look like?
Well, I mean, there's a mixture. We just did an immersive experience for Inaritu. It's what's the final name of it?
It's called Carne y Arena.
Yeah. It depicts the subjective experience of crossing the border and being intercepted by INS. And that's a physical installation. That's right now at the LACMA in LA.
Any of you seen it, by the way? Is the wait list like, I don't think anybody isn't the wait list like a year long?
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems with that is it's a pretty big installation. It's about a 6-minute long experience, and it's one person per.
And what is the experience like? Just quickly describe, because it's pretty amazing if you haven't heard about it.
Oh, it's break of dawn, and you're somewhere along the southwest border as you're crossing over into the U.S. and
there's actually
INS.
there's sand.
Yeah, I mean, part of the experience, is they encourage you to take your shoes and socks off and walk barefoot across the gravel and sand there to be part of that sense of presence.
One of the things that's really important about location-based experiences like this is that you can control 100% of the environment. So they make it very, very cold, like it would be in the desert, the sand, as you say. And so the combination of the physical matching the virtual is what really gives this experience incredible impact. And that will be true in any kind of location-based setting, but there's some really exciting opportunities in the theme parks in terms of mixed reality, and outside the theme parks in void-like experiences where they're mixing the physical reality with the virtual reality.
So, by the way, and I would tell you guys to go online and look at what the experience is like, but they actually haven't shown any of it, right? You have to be there to go. So, and that's an experience where literally one person goes in at a time. You're describing something that's a little bit more, mass. What about the movie theater going experience? And I don't know if you all just saw, but Netflix just released earnings today, and they took the opportunity to also take a jab at the movie theater industry. And I'll just read this real quick. In their letter to investors, they said, "We understand that our approach to films debuting movies on Netflix first is counter to Hollywood's century-old windowing tradition. But just as we changed and reinvented the TV business by putting consumers first and making access to content more convenient, we believe internet TV can similarly reinvigorate the film business, as distinct from the theatrical business." So I'm just wondering, I'm not asking you to comment on what the business models of the future will look like when it comes to theater, but in addition to what the way that Netflix is trying to innovate and disrupt the existing model, what are you doing to make the theater going experience something that people will want to keep doing?
We're actually, it's one of sort of 3 areas of focus for us. We call it immersive cinema, but we're really trying to understand what is the next generation theatrical release and what is the next generation home entertainment release, and how are they different, and what is enabled by these emerging technologies. And I don't think we still know the answer to that. We've certainly been doing some experimentation. Everything from, do you want to be in a scene from the movie, or do you want to almost use the movie as a portal into a related story, for example? So it really enhances, it enriches and enhances the cinematic experience, but it's not the same experience. Once again, in the theaters, it will be a form of location-based entertainment. So as theaters sort of advance, so too will the nature of the experiences.
I also think interactive versus passive entertainment are fundamentally different experiences. So I don't imagine passive entertainment experiences are going to go away in favor of interactive. They're just a really different thing. Although they may, sort of blend in some places. Our whole mission in life since our founding has been about disruption and always asking, is there a better way? Is there a different way of thinking about this? So, that kind of thought process of Netflix kind of rethinking how film distribution goes, it's
You're on board?
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah. All right. Questions from the audience. There were quite a few hands that went up for people in the VR space. So question over here. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stephen King from the University of North Carolina.
Stephen King.
Yeah, you got it.
Awesome.
From the Media Innovation Lab at the University of North Carolina. Have you been able to successfully had full room tracking of a human face interaction? So, you know, when you have robots and you have Darth Vader's mask, have you been able to get that humanistic full view where people can interact and do that in a virtual environment?
Do you mean a character or
so
tracking the person who's...
So a character who is a human who shows emotion in the face, but I can walk around them and move around. You know, we have that problem where we CGI them and they don't look real and they feel dead. And I didn't know if you guys have solved that problem yet.
Yes, but depends on degree, you know, what level of fidelity. You know, the border crossing experience has got a bunch of humans in that, and that's pretty compelling.
And you can, on Carne Arena, you can actually, you know, walk around the characters, and they do feel really authentic as humans. I mean, there's still a ways to go because the technology is still not quite advanced enough, but it's amazing how much you believe everything that's going on.
I mean, yes, we have a ways to go before you're going to see a real-time rendered VR experience that makes you think you're looking at photography.
Other questions?
Rick Chavey, EditorWorks. Does this change perhaps also how you make movies in the sense of, you know, from screen tests to crowdsourcing of parts in the movie, or does the fact you have to put that VR thing over your head kind of block out viewing the person? But can they be a part of it? You know, you test 1,000 people at Disney World. Oh, this person really did it well.
I haven't been involved in anything quite like that. Crowdsourcing bits, I know that RPO is doing a little bit. Ready Player One, there's a whole world where they're in the Oasis with, you know, thousands and thousands of avatars, and some of those avatars were contributed by the public.
It's certainly an interesting possibility, because if you sort of look out well into the future and you have sort of connected, persistent, you know, dynamic worlds, you can imagine that a single entity probably can't do that alone, that might be a place where you start to look at user-generated content and crowdsourcing and so forth.
Are you volunteering? Sure. Question over here.
Hi, Alex Atzberger, president of SAP Ariba. Last year we were here and Magic Leap was on stage. And I was just curious how you interact with Magic Leap and how that fits into the overall Disney strategy.
So we have a strategic collaboration with Magic Leap, which we announced, I think it was a little bit before Roni was out here, because it was June of last year. And it's been a wonderful collaboration. We collaborate with a lot of different kinds of companies because we're interested in understanding and perhaps even in some cases influencing where the technology is going to go in order to be able to deliver the kinds of experiences that we want to ultimately deliver. And in the case of Magic Leap, one of the things that was very attractive is that they, as a company, and Roni as a leader, were really very interested in its application in storytelling and entertainment specifically. So there was a nice sort of cultural and philosophical match there.
So is this going to be a part of the upcoming Disney experience?
Unsure at this point, but I think you're referring to the hotel that they just announced.
It's like being called the Westworld of
I'm not sure that's the way Disney described it.
I'm hoping there's a lot less killing.
Yeah. But it was announced at D23 that there's going to be a very immersive hotel, a Star Wars hotel experience. And I suspect that they will leverage all kinds of technologies that enable them to deliver that kind of sense of total immersion, that once you step through the entranceway, you are in the world of Star Wars. And I would assume that mixed reality would play a role in that, because one of the things, as we were talking about earlier, is the physical coupled with the digital, that really completes the magic. Like, that's one of the nice things about AR or mixed reality, is that you don't have the isolation of the goggles. You actually can be with lots of other people and see them. And you know, we wouldn't want to do digitally what could be done physically, because physically is so compelling. But there are things that can't be done physically that might be able to be done with mixed reality.
Okay, another question back here.
Deborah Weinswig, Fun Global Retail and Tech. Can you talk about the standard side of things, like verifying someone's identity and also payments, please?
You know, we actually are working through other distribution channels, so we're not actually involved in that part of the process. So I really can't speak to that. I'm not sure if you can.
I'm guessing you have the same response.
Yeah, no, we make the content and we don't manage the sales or distribution.
Other questions? Did you have one, or you're not totally sure? Were you just gonna scratch your head, or I didn't mean to? Okay.
Hey everyone. So with what Facebook's announced with Facebook AR Studio at F8, and with what we've been seeing for some time with, you know, more advanced SLAM kind of mapping technologies that are rumored in the, you know, the iPhone 8 with ARKit integration, et cetera. Where do you guys see that as a meaningful stepping stone to more immersive AR once the glasses, you know, are rumored to come a year, 5 years down the line? Is that something that you're exploring on the mobile side?
Definitely, because we want to be platform agnostic. We believe that each platform delivers an opportunity, but each opportunity will be different, right? What you'll be able to do if you have wearable AR glasses will be different than what you could do with a phone. But, you know, millions and millions and millions of people have phones already. So in an effort to try to you know, get experiences out there, we try to think about, you know, design experiences that optimize for each individual platform, but we're looking at the entire spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, with the announcement of ARKit, suddenly there's a, you know, very large platform of potential users, because there's millions and millions of those phones out there now. Suddenly all those people will be able to experience AR content.
So that actually raises another question just about how you're working with the ecosystem, because there are obviously there are a lot of VR startups and bigger players, and I know you've partnered with Google also. But how are you guys, as the VR space and the fact that there are so many like small new entrants, does it change the way that you work with the larger tech community? And I know you're in San Francisco, but you're like in the Presidio way out there. Has it changed at all?
No,
the Presidio is great. I love it. You're just far.
No, I think you know, we have very active conversations with lots of the larger companies in Silicon Valley for sure. And then we also try to keep an eye on what's happening with the smaller startups, because a lot of those companies are trying to solve a particular problem that we could definitely benefit from the way that they are, you know, their inventions, literally. And then, you know, in terms of other VR studios, we have a core group of people that are sort of made up of people from the film side and people from the games side of the business, so coming together because we're really aspiring to create something that is the best of both. But we have worked with third parties on various experiences, so we're even working with those kinds of companies, so VR startups and that kind.
Okay. And John, on the special effects side, has there been any? Do you engage with other tech companies? Do you partner with startups in any way? Do you learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking to advance the boundaries, solve problems, you know, look to see is there a better way of doing this or that. So yeah, we're always looking to see what's out there, what somebody's working on. And we are using some of these AR and VR tools ourselves just in our filmmaking. Like I mentioned, some of the virtual set scouting that we started doing, as opposed to just building the cardboard models of old. Now you can have a much stronger sense of presence, sensing scale, and it's a lot easier to make tweaks and changes. So if you're walking around in this digital version of a set, you think, you know what, I think the ceiling really needs to be higher. We've got some editing tools to actually do that and get to a result quickly. And then I mentioned that the use case of you're on set and there's a lot of green screen. It can be a very alienating experience for people. And so we've got an AR application called CineView that allows us on set to be able to, just from an iOS device, show operator, director, the actors kind of what's going to be around them and help kind of figure out scale issues.
Very cool. Well, we're going to wrap up. I'm not going to ask you when and where we will see Luke again, but we'll leave that for another conversation. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank
Thank you.
you.